Good evening, dear viewers. You're watching RTD's English News Edition. Here are our headlines for this evening. At the Presidency of the Republic, the head of state presided over the 15th session of the Council of Ministers. In the international news concerning coronavirus, WHO is against herd immunity. Thank you for joining us in our newsroom. Under the presidency of the head of state, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, the Council of Ministers held its weekly sessions today, Tuesday, October 13, and held its 15th session for the current year. On the agenda of this session were a number of bills and draft decrees. As usual, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation gave the following report on the highlights of the session.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, sous la présidence du chef de l'État, Son Excellence M. Ismail Omar Guelleh, s'est tenue la 15e séance du Conseil des ministres en ce mardi 13 octobre 2020.
Ministry of Budget. First question, draft finance law on the final regulation of the state budget for the financial year 2019. The financial accounts of the state for the financial year 2019 are approved as general revenue at 143 million Djiboutian francs. The implementation of the 2019 budget took place in an economic context marked by a gradual reception of economic growth that reached 7.7%. This economic growth is driven by exports of transport and logistics services supported by the newly established commercial infrastructure. Tax revenue is performing well thanks to both direct and indirect taxes. General state expenditure falls short of the budget forecasts of the 2019 amending finance law. All items combined, moreover, they remain higher than in 2018. On investments recorded an implementation rate of 108% compared to the forecast figure. This investment plan reflects the government's political will to focus capital expenditure on several essential points, including the social sector, in order to meet the educational and health needs of the population and to support the vulnerable population as part of the fight against poverty. Second question, draft order on the allocation of a plot of land to the Ministry of Justice and Penitentiary Affairs in charge of human rights. The purpose of the draft order is to allocate a plot of land with a total surface area of 8 hectares located at PK23. This plot of land is intended for the future prison. Third question, draft order on the allocation of a plot of land located in Nagat. The purpose of the draft order is to allocate to the African Institute of Djibouti a plot of land with a surface area of 15,000 meters located in Nagat. The said plot of land is to be used for the establishment of a private institute of higher education.
And in the second part of the Foreign Minister's report, several bills have been discussed and approved during this Council of Ministers. Let's hear it from the Minister.
La quatrième question concerne un projet d'arrêté portant attribution à titre onéreux d'une parcelle de terrain au profit de la société Alvima, SARL.
Fourth question, draft order allocating a plot of land to the company Alvima, SARL. The purpose of the draft order is to allocate a plot of land with a total area of 1.8 hectares located in the Nagat zone to the benefits of Alvima. This plot of land is intended for the establishment of a real estate project. The adoption of the draft decree is part of the promotion of private investments and will contribute to the increase and diversification of the real estate offer. Presidency of the Republic. Fifth question. Draft law relating to radiological and nuclear safety, nuclear security, and the application of guarantees. This draft law defines radiological and nuclear safety, nuclear security, and the application of guarantees to all activities and practices as well as to installations involving sources of ionizing radiation on the territory of the Republic of Djibouti. Our country, which makes extensive use of radiation sources, neutron probes, radiotherapy and radioscopy facilities, and seal sources for teaching and research purposes, needs legislation that is adapted to and complies with its international commitments. The provision of this draft law provides, in terms of both safety and security, for a regulatory mechanism, including the gestation of a compact authority, the implementation of a system of authorizations, the evolution of the measures taken by operators, and the implementation of a system of inspections to demonstrate compliance with the international commitments. Sixth question, draft law establishing the National Authority for Nuclear, Radiological, Chemical, and Biological Safety and Security. The Republic of Djibouti has undertaken to prohibit chemical and nuclear weapons and to ensure nuclear, radiological, radiological, chemical, and biological safety and security through the peaceful use of nuclear technology and chemical products. By ascending to international texts, in particular the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Chemical Weapons, of the Stockpiling and Use of Weapons, and on their Destruction, Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, MPT, the Convention of the Physical Protection of Nuclear Material, the International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, and the Safeguards Agreement and its additional protocol between the Republic of Djibouti and the Safeguards Agreement and its additional protocol and the International Atomic Energy Agency. This draft law established an independent national structure component in nuclear, radiological, chemical, and biological security and safety. Placed under the authority of the Presidency, the national authority shall ensure the control of nuclear and radiological, chemical, and biological safety and security to protect workers, patients, the public, and the environment from risks related to nuclear, chemical, and biological activities. It also contributes to informing and raising awareness among the population. Our country has port, airport, mining, and industrial infrastructures. The establishment of a structure reinforces the legislative framework for security at national level. Communication. The Minister of Commerce gave a report on his participation by video conference in the 3rd Turkey-Africa Economic and Trade Forum, which took place from 8 to 9 October 2020.
Sont le comité technique et scientifique et la direction générale.
And on the sidelines of the launch of work on the water supply network between Bisidiro and Sublali pipeline, as well as work on synthetic turf for the Omnisport Stadium, the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed had a close meeting with the notables of the Obok region. More details with Dini Musa.
All community leaders from the chief town and localities of Obok region, they did not miss to express their gratefulness to the Prime Minister for the launching of multiple projects intended to improve access to water in all the region of Obok and for the development of young people. Also, they pointed out the social problems and basic development most accentuated in the region to find quick solutions to improve living conditions. In his response, the Prime Minister conveyed the greetings of the President of the Republic and the First Lady. He stressed that he took good note of the grievance raised by the notables. He also announced that the project launch in Ubuk will allow the security of access to water in the region, creating new opportunities developed in the coastal areas of Ubuk.
The Minister of Health, Mohamed Warsamadiriye, received yesterday in his office Ambassador Larry Andre, accompanied by the Deputy Chief of Mission, Ms. Andrea, and the USAID representative, Mr. Lloyd Jackson. Here are the details commented by Dini Musa.
A meeting between the Minister of Health and Ambassador Larry Andre took place in the presence of the Secretary General of Health Department, Dr. Meke Mohamed Musa, the Technical Advisor, Mr. Umar Ali, and the Director in charge of International Cooperation at the Ministry of Health, Mrs. Noura Abdi. Discussions focused on bilateral health cooperation between Djibouti and the United States. The American Ambassador Larry Andre and his delegation reaffirmed their willingness to strengthen the level of health cooperation with the Department of Health to support the efforts of the Djiboutian government to improve the health system. Also, the Minister of Health stressed the strong fraternal ties between the American people and the Djiboutians, who have excellent relations of cooperation.
As for the Minister of Labour responsible for the reform of the administration, Ismail Ibrahim Roble, received in an audience yesterday late in the day the Ambassador of the Republic of India in Djibouti, Mr. Ashok Kumar, comments in the following video.
The meeting is part of the prospecting of partnership between the National Institute of Public Administration of the Ministry of Labor, in charge of the reform of the administration, and training institutions of friendly countries in order to make it a pole of excellence training. The two senior officials discussed together the relations of friendship and cooperation between the two friendly and boundary peoples. During this meeting, the minister discussed about the current interventions of the government in favor of youth employment and technical and technological training of the National Institute of Public Administration.
Other news of today, the Djiboutian Handball Federation closed the National Handball Championship last night at the State High School complex by a match that pitted the two best teams in the Women's Championship, namely the National Gendarmerie GN and the Republican Guard GR. At the end of a match rich in twists and turns and suspense, it is the team of the GN that won against the team of the Republican Guard. In addition, it should be noted that the ceremony of the National Handball Championship for the 2019-2020 season saw the participation of the Secretary of State for Youth and Sports, Hassan Mohammed Kamil, the Minister of Women and Family, Mumina Ahmed, the President of the CNOSD, as well as senior officers of the National Gendarmerie and the Republican Guard and members of the Handball Federation, as well as former players. Also sports, the Djiboutian Judo Federation closed yesterday evening at the Hassan Goulet Stadium a training of kata for the belts graded under the supervision of the National Technical Director Mr. Ghanem and the President of the Federation Mr. Faisal. This training began in mid-August and mobilized 16 young girls and boys. At the end of this training, higher grade exams were organized. The Director of Sports present at the ceremony stressed that this course is part of the policy of the Department of Sports in terms of capacity building of technicians of the structures, federal, but also in an approach of encouragement to the most deserving to enable them to evolve by obtaining higher grades. And now moving on to the news around the world, Kenya is preparing for a massive return of desert locusts, warned the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. Dini Musa has more to tell us.
The Horn of Africa was barely seeing the end of the worst locust invasion in 70 years, when it was already facing a new one. The billions of locusts that invaded the region this year, devastating tens of thousands of hectares of crops, have reproduced. A female locust alone lays an average of 100 eggs. They can multiply by 20 every 3 months, the larvae having reached the stage of maturity to take flight. Now, from these new swarms, they have already been seen in Yemen and northeastern Ethiopia. By the end of October, they will have invested eastern Ethiopia and central Somalia. Northern Kenya will then be hit again in November.
The chief of the WHO warns against the immunity of herd concerning COVID-19 infections. More details with Didi Musa.
Virus circulate freely to facilitate herd immunity? Not an option for WHO. The World Health Organization said Monday that it would be out of the question to allow COVID-19 to circulate freely in society so that people can, as some have suggested, achieve herd immunity. Never in the history of public health has herd immunity been used as a strategy to respond to an epidemic, let alone a pandemic. It is scientifically and ethically problematic, said WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus.
And that's all for this news. Thank you for joining us on the radio television of Djibouti and have a great evening.